Commander Hana stood at the tall window of her quarters, staring out at the stars. Her violet skin looked pale in the cold light from the distant suns. She pressed one hand against the glass, feeling the slight vibration of the ship's engines beneath her feet. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would meet him. Captain Tay. The name alone made her blood run cold. Hana had grown up hearing stories about humans. Her people, the Velkari, were proud warriors. They had conquered 17 different star systems. They had defeated enemies that other species thought were unbeatable. The Velkari Military Academy taught discipline, honor, and tactical perfection. Hana had graduated at the top of her class. She had led successful missions against pirates and rebels. She was not a soldier who scared easily. But humans were different. Humans came from Earth, a planet that the galactic community called a death world. It was a place where almost everything could kill you. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent and unpredictable. The native predators were fast and deadly. The diseases were brutal. Even the plants could poison you. Most intelligent species evolved on gentle worlds, where survival was about cooperation and clever thinking. Humans evolved in a place that tried to kill them every single day. That made them dangerous. The military files on Captain Tay sat on Hana's desk, glowing softly in the dim room. She had read them so many times that she had memorized every word. The Battle of Crimson Nebula, the Siege of Outpost Gamma, the raid on the Krillian fortress. In every mission, Captain Tay had done things that should have been impossible. At Crimson Nebula, his entire squad had been killed in the first attack. A normal soldier would have retreated. Captain Tay had pushed forward alone into a Krillian dreadnought. The interior temperature of those ships was hot enough to melt Velkari armor. Tay had fought through it for 6 hours, sabotaging the ship's core and escaping just before it exploded. When they found him floating in space, his armor was half melted and his body was covered in burns. He was still conscious. He was still holding his weapon. At Outpost Gamma, the station had been surrounded by enemy forces. Evacuation was impossible. Most of the defenders were wounded. Captain Tay had held the main corridor for 72 hours without sleeping. The enemy had thrown wave after wave of soldiers at him. He had fought them all. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Tay still standing, surrounded by empty ammunition containers and disabled enemy drones. He had saved 43 lives that day. The stories went on and on. Each one seemed more impossible than the last. Hana's instructors at the academy had used Tai's tactics as teaching examples. They called him the Demon of Terra. They said he represented everything terrifying about humanity. Humans did not know when to quit. They did not understand the concept of acceptable losses. They would push their bodies far beyond safe limits to complete a mission. They could survive injuries that would kill other species. They bonded with their teammates so strongly that they would die to protect them. Hana had studied the biology reports too. Human bodies were incredibly dense with muscle. Their bones were thick and hard to break. They had redundant systems for almost everything. They could function with damaged organs that would be fatal injuries to most species. They healed quickly. They could run for hours without stopping. They could eat almost anything without getting sick. Their immune systems were aggressive and powerful, and their minds were just as dangerous as their bodies. Humans had something called stubbornness. When a human decided to do something, they would keep trying even when logic said it was hopeless. They had persistence. They would work on a problem for years if necessary. They had something they called spite, which meant they would succeed just to prove others wrong. All of this made them the most feared warriors in the galaxy. When the Velkari High Command announced that they would be working with the Terran Coalition on a joint military operation, Hana had felt sick. When they asked for volunteers to serve as liaison officers, she had stayed silent. She did not want to work with humans. She especially did not want to work with their most dangerous warrior. But High Command had other plans. They reviewed all the officers and chose the ones with the best tactical records. Hana's name was on that list. 3 days ago, she had received her orders. She was now the Velkari liaison officer for Operation Arcturus. Her counterpart would be Captain Tay of the Terran Defense Corps. Hana had thought about refusing, but that would be cowardice, and Velkari warriors did not show cowardice. She had thought about requesting a different assignment, but her duty was clear. She had accepted the mission with a heavy heart, hoping that perhaps she would not need to interact with Captain Tay too much. Perhaps he would stay with his human soldiers, and she would stay with her Velkari team. Those hopes had died this morning when she received the updated mission briefing. The operation required close cooperation between human and Velkari forces. She and Captain Tay would be working side by side, planning tactics together, leading joint combat operations. There was no escape. Hana turned away from the window and looked at her armor, standing in the corner of her quarters. It was painted in the dark blue colors of the Velkari Empire, with her rank insignia on the shoulders. She had worn that armor in 12 combat missions. She had never felt fear while wearing it, until now. She walked to her desk and opened the file one more time. Captain Tay's service photo looked back at her. He did not look like a demon. He looked like an ordinary human, with dark eyes and a calm expression. But Hana knew better than to judge by appearances. The most dangerous predators on Earth often looked harmless until they attacked. Tomorrow, she would board the human ship TSS Resolute. Tomorrow, she would meet the demon of Terra face to face. Tomorrow, she would discover if the stories were true. Hana closed the file and began to prepare her equipment. She checked her weapons 3 times. She reviewed the mission parameters again. She did breathing exercises to calm her nerves. But no matter what she did, the fear remained. She was about to meet humanity's greatest warrior. Every instinct she had told her to run, to hide, to avoid this encounter. But she was a Velkari commander. She had a duty. She would face Captain Tay with honor, even if her hands shook when she did it. The stars outside her window seemed very cold and far away. Somewhere out there, Captain Tay was probably preparing for the mission, too. Did he know that his allies feared him? Did he care? Or was he truly the emotionless killing machine that the report suggested? Hana would find out soon enough. She only hoped she would survive the experience. The transport shuttle felt too small. Hana sat with her Velkari security team, all of them in full combat armor. Across from her sat Lieutenant Bora and Sergeant Kwan, both experienced warriors. They looked calm and ready. Hana wondered if they could hear her heart beating too fast inside her chest. Through the shuttle window, she could see the TSS Resolute growing larger. The human ship was massive, covered in gray armor plating and weapon systems. It looked brutal and efficient, just like everything else humans made. The shuttle pilot announced that they would dock in 3 minutes. Hana took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. The docking process was smooth. The shuttle connected to the human ship with a soft thump and a hiss of equalizing air pressure. The door opened, and Hana stepped into the Resolute. The first thing she noticed was the noise. Human ships were loud. Somewhere, machines hummed and clanked. Boots rang on metal floors. Voices called out to each other, some laughing, some shouting orders. It was chaos compared to the quiet discipline of Velkari vessels. A young human officer approached them. She had short dark hair and wore a simple duty uniform. "Commander Hana? Welcome aboard the Resolute. I'm Lieutenant Yuna, Intelligence Officer. Captain Tay is waiting for you in the briefing room. If you'll follow me?" Hana nodded, not trusting her voice. Lieutenant Yuna led them through the corridors of the ship. Human crew members moved past them, some stopping to stare at the Velkari visitors with curious eyes. None of them looked afraid. None of them moved with the rigid military precision that Hana expected. They seemed relaxed, almost casual. How could they be so calm when they served under the demon of Terra? The briefing room was large and functional. Holographic displays covered one wall, showing tactical data about their target. A long table filled the center of the room. Around it stood several human officers and soldiers. They all turned to look when Hana entered, and then he walked in. The room fell silent instantly. Hana felt her body go tense. This was Captain Tay. He was not what she expected. The files had not prepared her for this. Yes, he was human, with the typical dense build of his species. But he was not a giant. He was not covered in scars and weapons. He wore a simple combat uniform with no decorations. His face was calm, almost gentle. His dark eyes swept across the room, taking in everything with a quiet intensity. When those eyes landed on Hana, she forced herself not to step back. She raised her hand in the formal Velkari salute, her arms stiff. Captain Tay smiled slightly. It was a small expression, barely visible, but it softened his entire face. "Commander Hana," he said. His voice was quiet, much softer than she expected. "I'm Tay. Thank you for coming. I've read your tactical assessments of the swarm's defensive patterns. They're excellent work. Your analysis of their movement algorithms was particularly insightful." Hana blinked. He had read her reports? He was complimenting her work? This was not how demons were supposed to act. "Thank you, Captain," she managed to say. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Tay gestured to the table. "Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss, and not much time. Lieutenant Yuna will brief us on the current situation." The briefing began. Lieutenant Yuna brought up holographic images of Arcturus 4, the mining colony that had been seized by the swarm. The swarm was a rogue artificial intelligence that had gone wrong. It built drones and machines, consuming everything in its path. The colony held valuable gravitonium deposits that neither the Velkari Empire nor the Terran Coalition could allow the swarm to take. "The swarm has approximately 5,000 combat drones defending the colony," Yuna explained. "They've fortified the main industrial sector here and here. Standard approach routes are heavily trapped. Any frontal assault would result in massive casualties." Sergeant Hyun, a heavy-set human with mechanical augments on his left arm, added his analysis. "Their power grid is centralized here. If we can disable it, their drones will switch to backup batteries. That gives us maybe 4 hours before they're back to full capacity." Corporal Mina, a small human woman with sharp eyes, pointed to several locations on the map. "I've identified 3 possible entry points that might not be as heavily defended. They're risky, but they could work." Hana watched this exchange with growing confusion. The human officers were suggesting ideas, debating options, sometimes disagreeing with each other. And Captain Tay just listened. He did not bark orders. He did not demand obedience. He asked questions, considered different opinions, and took notes. "Commander Hana," Tay said suddenly, turning to her, "your people have more experience fighting the swarm than we do. What's your assessment?" Hana straightened in her seat. "The swarm adapts quickly to repeated tactics. Whatever strategy we use, we can only use it once. They learn and adjust. Frontal assaults fail because they have time to respond. Speed and unpredictability are essential." Tay nodded slowly. "Agreed. So we need a plan that hits multiple objectives simultaneously. Divide their attention. Prevent them from concentrating their forces." He looked around the table. "Suggestions?" The discussion continued for 2 hours. Slowly, a battle plan took shape. The humans would lead the assault on the western sector, using their superior endurance to push through heavy resistance. The Velkari would strike the eastern sector, using their tactical precision to disable key systems. Both teams would converge on the central power core. Throughout the planning session, Hana kept watching Captain Tay. He was nothing like she expected. He listened more than he spoke. He considered ideas from everyone, even the lowest-ranking soldiers. When he made decisions, he explained his reasoning. When someone disagreed with him, he did not get angry. He just asked them to explain their concerns. This was not a demon. This was not a monster. This was a leader who respected his people. The briefing ended as the ship's evening cycle began. The human crew filed out, talking and joking with each other. Lieutenant Yuna invited the Velkari team to join them for a meal in the mess hall. Sergeant Kwan accepted eagerly, always interested in trying new things. Lieutenant Bora followed with more caution. Hana stayed behind, still processing what she had witnessed. She found herself alone in the briefing room, staring at the tactical displays. The mission would begin in 18 hours. 18 hours until she would see Captain Tay in actual combat. The stories had to be true. They had to be. 50 different mission reports could not all be wrong. But if they were true, why did he seem so normal, so calm, so human? "Commander?" Hana jumped. Captain Tay had returned. He stood in the doorway, holding 2 containers of what looked like hot drinks. "I thought you might want some tea," he said, offering her one of the containers. "Velkari metabolism processes caffeine well according to our medical database. This is Korean barley tea. It's mild." Hana took the container carefully. "Thank you, Captain." Tay leaned against the table, his posture relaxed. "I know this must be strange for you, working with humans for the first time, working with me specifically." He gave her that small smile again. "I've heard some of the stories people tell about me. About all of us, really." Hana did not know what to say. Was he going to address the legends directly? "Tomorrow will be dangerous," Tay continued. "The swarm doesn't negotiate. It doesn't retreat. We're going to face heavy resistance. People on both our teams might get hurt, might die." His voice was quiet but firm. "But I want you to know something, Commander. I will do everything in my power to bring your soldiers home safely, all of them. That's a promise." He pushed away from the table and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we fight together." Then he was gone. Hana stood alone in the briefing room holding the warm container of tea. Her hands, she realized, had stopped shaking. The fear was still there, buried deep. But something else had joined it, something she had not expected to feel: curiosity. The drop pods hit the ground hard. Hana felt the impact through her entire body as her pod slammed into the surface of Arcturus IV. The door blew open with explosive charges, and she rolled out with her weapon ready. Around her, the rest of her Velkari team deployed from their own pods. The industrial sector of the mining colony rose up before them, all gray metal and smoking ruins. The swarm attacked immediately. Combat drones poured from the buildings like insects from a disturbed nest. They were spider-like machines with plasma cutters for arms and missile launchers mounted on their backs. Their optical sensors glowed red in the dusty air. There were dozens of them, then hundreds. "Defensive formation!" Hana shouted. Her team responded instantly, creating overlapping fields of fire. Plasma bolts lit up the morning darkness. Drones fell, sparking and twitching, but more kept coming. On the western approach, she could hear the sounds of the human assault. Explosions, gunfire. The harsh crack of human weapons was different from Velkari plasma rifles, deeper, more aggressive. "Commander, the eastern entrance is sealed," Lieutenant Bora called out. "Blast doors, reinforced. We need heavy charges." "Set them," Hana ordered. "Sergeant Kwan, cover our flanks. Don't let them surround us." As her team worked, Hana allowed herself a brief moment to check the tactical display on her helmet. The human team was pushing forward faster than expected. Much faster. They were tearing through swarm defenses like they were nothing. Captain Tay's signal was at the very front of the advance. Of course he was. The explosive charges detonated, blowing the blast doors inward. Hana's team pushed through into a large corridor. More drones waited inside. The fighting became close and brutal. One drone got past Sergeant Kwan's fire and lunged at Hana. She shot it twice, but its momentum carried it forward. She had to roll aside as its body crashed into the wall behind her. They fought through 2 more corridors. The swarm's drones were relentless but predictable. They followed simple attack patterns that Velkari training had prepared Hana to counter. Her team moved with precise coordination, covering each other, advancing in controlled stages. Then her helmet display flashed red. Enemy reinforcements, coming from an unexpected direction. A lot of reinforcements. "Commander, we've got a problem," Sergeant Quan said. His voice was tense. "Major drone concentration, moving to cut us off from the Western team. If they get between us and the humans, we'll be isolated." Hana checked her tactical map. Quan was right. The swarm had predicted their movements and was adapting. If those drones succeeded in blocking the passage, her team would be trapped with no support. "We need to move faster," she decided. "Double time to checkpoint 3. We'll link up with the human team there." Her team ran. Behind them, the sounds of approaching drones grew louder. Hana could hear the mechanical clicking of their legs, the whine of charging weapons. They were not going to make it to the checkpoint in time, unless someone stopped the drones. The corridor opened into a large junction, and there, fighting alone against a swarm of drones, was Captain Tay. Hana stopped so suddenly that Lieutenant Bora nearly ran into her. For a moment, she could only stare. The stories were true. All of them were true. Captain Tay moved like nothing she had ever seen. He was not fast in the way that meant superhuman speed. He was fast in the way that meant perfect efficiency. Every movement had a purpose. Every shot hit its target. He dodged a plasma bolt by shifting his weight, not even wasting energy on a full step. He shot a drone in its optical sensor, blinding it, then used it as a shield while he reloaded. 3 drones rushed him at once. Tay dropped his rifle, pulled out a combat knife, and went to meet them. Hana watched in shock as he slid under the first drone, cutting into its underside. He came up behind it, grabbed its main body, and threw it into the second drone. Both machines crashed together in a shower of sparks. The third drone fired at him. The shot missed by centimeters as Tay twisted aside. He closed the distance and drove his knife into the drone's central processor. And then he picked up his rifle and kept fighting. "Commander, we need to help him," Lieutenant Bora said. "Form up and advance," Hana ordered. Her team moved forward, adding their fire to Tai's. The concentrated firepower cut through the drones rapidly. Within minutes, the junction was clear. Captain Tay turned to face them. His armor was scorched and dented. His breathing was heavy, but his eyes were calm and focused. "Good timing, Commander," he said. These things were getting aggressive. "Is your team secure?" "Secure," Hana confirmed. She wanted to ask him how he had survived alone against that many drones. She wanted to ask how he moved like that. But there was no time. "The swarm adapted faster than we expected," Tay said, checking his weapon. "They're trying to separate our forces. We need to stay together now. Combined strength." More drones appeared at the far end of the junction. Tay gestured toward a side corridor. "This way. There's a maintenance shaft that leads to the power core. It's narrow, but it's our best option." They ran together. Human and Velkari soldiers mixed into one group. Hana found herself running beside Captain Tay. He was breathing hard but still moving steadily. Human endurance. She had read about it, but seeing it in person was different. The maintenance shaft was exactly as Tay described, narrow and dark. They had to move in single file. Hana was third in line, right behind Sergeant Hyun. Captain Tay took the lead position. Halfway through the shaft, they heard a grinding sound, metal on metal. The shaft was closing. The swarm had figured out where they were and was trying to crush them. "Move! Move!" Tay shouted. Everyone ran. The walls pressed inward. The ceiling dropped lower. Hana could feel panic rising in her chest. If they got trapped here, they would die. Ahead of her, Sergeant Hyun stumbled. His mechanical arm caught on a piece of protruding metal. He went down hard, blocking the narrow passage. "Hyun, get up!" Tay grabbed the sergeant and tried to pull him free. but the mechanical arm was stuck. The walls were still closing. They had seconds. Tay did not hesitate. He braced his feet against one wall and his back against the other, and he pushed. Hana watched in disbelief as Captain Tay held back the closing walls through sheer physical strength. His face turned red with effort. His armor creaked under the strain, but he held. "Get him free!" Tay gritted out. Hana and Lieutenant Bora worked frantically. They cut through the metal piece holding Hyun's arm. The sergeant came loose. Everyone scrambled past Tay toward the exit. "Captain, come on!" Hana called. Tay released the walls and ran. The shaft collapsed behind him, metal screaming as it compressed. He dove through the exit just as it sealed shut. They emerged into the central power chamber. The swarm's main reactor pulsed with blue light before them. Success was within reach, but Hana could not stop staring at Captain Tay. He had held back a collapsing shaft. He had put himself in the most dangerous position to save Sergeant Hyun. A human saving a human. That would make sense. But Hyun was not critical to the mission. He was just one soldier. Except to Captain Tay, he was not just one soldier. He was a person. He was a member of the team. And that meant everything. Sergeant Hyun was standing now, checking his mechanical arm. He looked at Tay with an expression Hana recognized. Absolute loyalty. The kind of loyalty that soldiers only give to leaders who would die for them. "Thank you, sir," Hyun said quietly. Tay just nodded and checked his weapon. "Let's finish this. Mina, Day, set charges on the primary conduits. Commander Hana, can your people handle the backup systems?" Hana snapped back to the mission. "Yes, Lieutenant Bora, with me." They worked quickly. The charges were set. The timer was activated. 5 minutes to get clear. As they retreated back through the complex, fighting their way past the last desperate drones, Hana kept watching Captain Tay. She watched him cover his soldiers. She watched him share his ammunition when Corporal Mina ran low. She watched him pull a wounded Velkari warrior to safety, taking a plasma hit to his shoulder in the process. He barely reacted to the injury. He just kept moving, kept leading, kept protecting. The charges detonated behind them. The power core exploded in a massive fireball. The swarm's drones all went dark at once, collapsing where they stood. The mission was a success. Back at the evacuation point, human and Velkari medics worked on the wounded. Hana watched Captain Tay refuse treatment until every other injured soldier had been seen first. His shoulder was bleeding, but he acted like it was nothing. "Captain," Hana approached him. "You're injured. You should—" "It's minor," Tay said. "Just a graze. I've had worse." She believed him. She had seen his file. She knew he had survived things that should have killed him. But now she understood something she had not before. He had not survived because he was superhuman. He had survived because he refused to let his people down, because he would rather die than fail them. That was not a demon. That was something much more dangerous. That was a leader worth following into any fight. Night had fallen on Arcturus IV. The western quadrant of the mining colony was secure, but the mission was not over. The swarm's central nexus was still active in the eastern sector. Tomorrow would bring another assault, another battle. For now, they had a temporary camp set up in one of the cleared buildings. Hana walked through the camp, observing the mixed human and Velkari soldiers. They sat together around portable heating units, sharing ration packs and stories. The humans were teaching the Velkari a card game. The Velkari were showing the humans how to properly maintain plasma weapons. The sight was strange, but somehow right. She found Captain Tay sitting alone in what used to be an office. He was at a desk, staring at a data pad. His face was drawn with exhaustion and something else, something that looked like grief. Hana hesitated at the door. She should leave him alone, but she found herself knocking on the door frame anyway. Tay looked up. For a moment, his expression was unguarded. She saw the pain there, raw and real. Then he composed himself and gestured for her to enter. Commander Hana, please, sit. She sat across from him. The office was dark except for the glow of the datapad. Outside, she could hear the distant sounds of soldiers talking and equipment being prepared for tomorrow. You lost 3 soldiers today, Hana said quietly. She had watched them die during the assault, 2 humans and 1 Velkari who had been caught in a swarm ambush. Tay nodded. His jaw was tight. Private Chan, Specialist Sora, and your soldier, Corporal Rin. Chan was 23 years old, just got married 6 months ago. His spouse doesn't know yet. I'll have to write the letter tonight. He looked down at the datapad. I've been trying to write it for 2 hours. What do you say? How do you tell someone that the person they love is never coming home? Hana had no answer. In Velkari culture, death in battle was honored. Families celebrated their warriors who fell in service to the Empire. But she could see that humans processed loss differently. They mourned, they grieved, they carried the weight of each death. The stories about you, Hana began carefully. They say you're a demon. They say you feel nothing. That you're humanity's perfect killing machine. That you're unstoppable and fearless. For the first time since she had met him, Captain Tay laughed. It was a sad sound, without humor. I know what they say, he replied. Commander Hana, do you want to know the truth about those stories? The real truth? She nodded. Tay set down the datapad and leaned back in his chair. His eyes were distant, looking at something she could not see. The Battle of Crimson Nebula. That's probably the most famous one. The reports say I breached a Krillian dreadnought alone and sabotaged it. They make it sound heroic. He paused. What the reports don't say is that my entire squad was killed in the first 30 seconds of the battle. 8 people. 8 friends. I watched them die and I couldn't save any of them. Hana stayed silent, listening. I didn't breach that dreadnought because I was brave, Tay continued. I did it because I was the only one left, and someone had to complete the mission. The temperature inside was over 400 degrees. My armor's cooling system failed after the first hour. I spent 5 hours in there, and every second I thought I was going to die. I was terrified. I was in so much pain that I wanted to give up. But I kept thinking about my squad, about how they had died trying to complete this mission. If I gave up, their deaths would mean nothing. He looked at Hana directly. I survived because I was too stubborn to quit. Not because I'm special, because I refused to let my friends die for nothing. What about Outpost Gamma? Hana asked. You held a defensive position for 72 hours without rest. That's impossible for most species. Impossible for humans, too, Tay said. I used military stimulants to stay awake, drugs that pushed my body past its safe limits. After the first day, I started hallucinating. By the end, I was barely human anymore, just a body running on chemicals and willpower. When reinforcements arrived, I collapsed. Spent 2 weeks in a medical coma. The doctor said another hour would have killed me. He rubbed his face with both hands. I wasn't defending that outpost because I'm a hero. I was defending it because there were 43 wounded soldiers there who couldn't evacuate. If I abandoned that position, they would all die. So I stayed. I didn't have a choice. How could I live with myself if I left them? Hana felt something shift in her understanding. Every story about you, every impossible thing you've done, they all have the same reason. Fear and love, Tay said simply. I'm terrified of letting people down. Terrified of watching more friends die. Terrified of being the one who survives when others don't. And I love my team, all of them. They're not just soldiers to me. They're people with families, with dreams, with lives ahead of them. When you care about people that much, you'll do anything to protect them. Even things that should be impossible. He gestured to the camp outside. Sergeant Hyun, who I pulled from that collapsing shaft today. He has a daughter who just turned 5. She draws pictures for him that he keeps in his locker. Corporal Mina has a brother with a medical condition. She sends most of her pay home to help with his treatment. Private Chan was saving money to buy a house. He had the pictures on his data pad. He was so excited about it. Tae's voice cracked slightly. I know all of them. Their stories, their hopes, their fears. That's what makes me dangerous, Commander. Not strength or training. The fact that I know exactly what will be lost if I fail. Every face, every name, every person who will mourn them. That knowledge doesn't make me fearless. It makes me desperate. Hana sat in the silence that followed. Outside, someone laughed at a joke. Someone else was singing a human song, off-key but cheerful. Life continuing despite the death that surrounded them. Your people fear humans, Tae said. I understand why. We come from a death world. We evolved to survive impossible conditions. Our bodies are built for endurance and violence, but that's not what makes us dangerous. Then what is? Hana asked. We can't turn it off, Tae answered. That stubbornness, that refusal to quit. Earth gave us no choice but to develop those traits. If our ancestors gave up when things got hard, they died. The ones who survived were the ones who kept trying, who adapted, who refused to accept defeat. That mindset is coded into our DNA now. We bring it with us to the stars. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the devastated colony. We don't give up on our missions. We don't give up on our teammates. We don't give up on our allies. That loyalty, that persistence, it's not a choice for us anymore. It's who we are. And yes, that makes us terrifying enemies. Because we'll keep coming, keep fighting, keep trying no matter what you throw at us. Tae turned back to her. But it also makes us the best friends you could ask for. Because that same loyalty applies to everyone we consider part of our pack. Today, I risked my life to save Sergeant Hyun. Tomorrow I would do the same for you or any of your soldiers. Not because you're human, because you're on my team, and I protect my team. Hana stood and approached him. I came to this mission terrified of you. I thought you were a monster, a demon, something inhuman. And now? Now I think I understand, Hana said slowly. You're not a monster. You're just very, very human. And that humanity, that capacity to care so deeply, that's what makes you both wonderful and terrifying. Tae smiled, a real smile this time. My species isn't perfect, Commander. We have flaws. We're stubborn to the point of stupidity sometimes. We get attached too easily. We take risks that more logical species would avoid, but we mean well. We're trying our best. Humans are pack animals, Hana said, remembering something from her briefing files. Your evolution made you social creatures. You form bonds easily and protect those bonds fiercely. Yes, Tae agreed. We need each other. A human alone is vulnerable. But humans together? We're unstoppable. That's the secret to our success. Not individual strength, but our ability to cooperate, to trust, to sacrifice for the group. He extended his hand to her in the human gesture of respect. We're better together than apart, Commander. Velkari and human, that's what I believe. Hana took his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing. I believe that too, Captain. Thank you for telling me the truth. About yourself, about your people. Thank you for listening, Tae replied, and for giving us a chance. I know it wasn't easy for you. As Hana left the office, she felt lighter somehow. The fear that had weighed on her for days was gone. In its place was something unexpected. Understanding, respect, and maybe the beginning of friendship. She looked back once. Captain Tae had returned to his desk, to the letter he needed to write. Even in grief, even in exhaustion, he would do his duty. He would honor his fallen soldier. Because that was what humans did. They remembered. They mourned. They carried the weight of their losses and kept moving forward. Not because they were fearless, but because they cared too much to give up. Dawn came cold and gray over Arcturus IV. Hana stood with Captain Tay on a ridge overlooking the swarm's central nexus. The massive structure pulsed with red light, surrounded by thousands of drones. It was the brain of the entire swarm network. Destroy it, and every swarm unit on the planet would shut down, fail, and the artificial intelligence would continue spreading across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. "Final check," Tay said into his comm unit. "All teams report status." The responses came in one by one. Sergeant Hyun's demolition team was in position. Lieutenant Yuna's strike squad was ready. Corporal Mina had disabled 3 of the perimeter sensors without triggering alarms, and Hana's Velkari warriors were prepared for the assault. "This is it," Tai said. He looked at Hana. "Are you ready, Commander?" Hana checked her weapon one last time. "Ready. Captain, let's finish this." The plan was complex. It required perfect timing and coordination between human and Velkari forces. The humans would draw the swarm's attention with a frontal assault on the main entrance. While the drones concentrated on that threat, the Velkari would slip in through the eastern maintenance tunnels. Both teams would converge on the central core and plant enough explosives to vaporize the entire facility. It was dangerous. People would die. But it was the only way. "All teams," Tay's voice was calm over the comm. "Execute." The battle began with a roar of weapons fire. Human soldiers charged the main entrance, their weapons blazing. The swarm responded instantly, pouring drones toward the threat, exactly as planned. Hana led her Velkari team into the maintenance tunnels. They moved quickly and quietly, their training allowing them to slip past automated defenses. The tunnels were narrow and dark, but her helmet's sensors showed the way clearly. "Contact ahead," Lieutenant Bora warned. 3 maintenance drones blocked their path. Not combat models, but still dangerous. "Disable them quietly," Hana ordered. Her team used close-range weapons to destroy the drones before they could send an alert. They kept moving. Meanwhile, on the surface, Captain Tay's frontal assault was working almost too well. The swarm was throwing everything at the human forces. Hana could hear the battle over her comm. Explosions, shouting, the constant crack of weapons fire. "We're taking heavy casualties," Sergeant Hyun reported. "But we're holding the line." "Just a little longer," Tay responded. "The commander is almost in position." Hana pushed her team faster. They had to reach the core before the humans were overwhelmed. The tunnel opened into a large chamber. The swarm's central processor rose before them, a massive structure of metal and circuitry glowing with malevolent intelligence. "Plant the charges," Hana ordered. "We have 4 minutes to get clear." Her team moved with precision, placing explosives at key structural points. The swarm's core began to react. Alert signals flashed, security systems activated. They had been detected. "Commander, you've got incoming!" Tay's voice cracked over the comm. "Every combat drone in the facility is heading your way." Hana's heart sank. This was not part of the plan. The swarm had realized the real threat and was redirecting all its forces. Her small team could not hold against that many enemies. "All human units converge on the eastern sector," Tay ordered. "Get to the commander's position now." "Captain, you'll be leaving your own position exposed," Hana protested. "I know," Tay replied. There was no hesitation in his voice. "But you're my teammate. We don't leave teammates behind. Move out." The drones hit Hana's position like a wave. There were dozens of them, then hundreds. Her team fought desperately, but they were being pushed back toward the core. If the charges detonated while they were still in the chamber, they would all die. Then Captain Tay crashed through the northern entrance with 20 human soldiers behind him. They had fought through the entire facility to reach this point. Their armor was damaged. Several were wounded, but they were there. "Form a perimeter," Tay shouted. "Buy the commander time to arm the charges." Human and Velkari warriors fought side by side. Sergeant Hyun's mechanical arm crushed a drone that got too close to Lieutenant Bora. Corporal Mina threw herself in front of Sergeant Kwan, taking a hit meant for him. and Captain Tay was everywhere at once, moving through the battle with deadly efficiency. Hana armed the final charge. Charges set. 3 minutes to detonation. Everyone out, Tay ordered. Move, move, move. They ran. The combined force retreated back through the tunnels, fighting every step of the way. Drones pursued them relentlessly. The timer counted down. 2 minutes. A tunnel collapsed ahead of them, cut off by swarm mining drones. They would have to find another route. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Sergeant Hyun found an emergency shaft. This way! It leads to the surface! They climbed. Hana's muscles burned. Behind her, she could hear the drones getting closer. Ahead, she could see sunlight. 45 seconds. Captain Tay was helping wounded soldiers up the shaft. A drone appeared at the bottom and started climbing. Tay shot it, but more were coming. Too many to stop. Captain, we have to go, Corporal Mina called down. Not yet, Tay called back. 3 more soldiers still climbing. 30 seconds. Hana reached the surface. She turned and saw Sergeant Kwan emerging. Then Lieutenant Bora, 1 more soldier still in the shaft, and Captain Tay at the bottom holding back the drones alone. 20 seconds. Tay, move! Hana screamed into her comm. The last soldier cleared the shaft. Tay threw a grenade down at the pursuing drones, then jumped for the ladder. He climbed with desperate speed. 10 seconds. He was not going to make it. Hana did not think. She ran back to the shaft entrance, grabbed Tay's hand as he reached the top, and pulled with all her strength. He came up and out just as the timer hit 0. The explosion was massive. The entire central nexus detonated in a fireball that lit up the sky. The shockwave knocked everyone to the ground. Hana landed hard, her ears ringing. She looked around frantically. Her team was scattered but alive. The human soldiers were getting to their feet, and Captain Tay was lying beside her, breathing hard but smiling. "Thank you, Commander," he said. "We're even now," Hana replied. "You saved my people. I saved you." Around them, every swarm drone suddenly went still. Their red optical sensors flickered and died. Without the central processor, they were just empty machines. The mission was complete. The journey back to the ships was quiet. Both human and Velkari soldiers were exhausted. They had won, but the victory had cost them. 4 more soldiers had died in the final assault. 8 total for the mission. 8 names that Hana would remember. 8 faces that Captain Tay would mourn. But they had won. Together. Back on the Resolute, there was a ceremony. The Velkari High Command sent an official message of congratulations. The Terran Coalition praised the successful joint operation. Medals were awarded. Speeches were made. Hana stood beside Captain Tay during the ceremony. They were both in formal uniform now, cleaned up and official. But she could still see the man who had held back a collapsing shaft. The leader who knew every soldier's story. The warrior who fought not out of hatred, but out of love. After the ceremony, Hana found Tay in the observation deck. He was staring out at the stars, his expression thoughtful. "Captain," she approached, "I've received orders from my high command. They want a full report on working with human forces." "What will you tell them?" Tay asked. Hana chose her words carefully. "I will tell them the truth. That I came to this mission fearing humanity's greatest warrior. That I expected to find a monster. Instead, I found someone who cares deeply about every life under his command. Someone who leads by example and earns loyalty through sacrifice. Someone who makes his allies better just by fighting beside them." She paused. "I'm also going to request a permanent transfer to Joint Velkari-Terran operations. If they approve it, I would like to continue working with you, Captain. There's much our people can learn from each other." Tay's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "I'd like that very much, Commander. We work well together." "We do," Hana agreed. She looked out at the stars. "I spent my whole life being taught to fear humans. Fear your strength, your endurance, your refusal to surrender. Now I understand that those qualities don't make you enemies. They make you exactly the allies the galaxy needs. The galaxy's a dangerous place, Tay said. Full of threats like the swarm, full of challenges that no single species can face alone. But if we work together, if we trust each other and learn from each other, maybe we can make it a little safer. A little better. Together, Hana repeated. The word felt right. They stood in comfortable silence, two warriors from different worlds who had learned to see past fear and prejudice. The legend of the Demon of Terra would continue to spread across the galaxy. But Hana now knew the truth behind that legend, and that truth was far more powerful than any story. Humans were not demons. They were not monsters. They were stubborn, loyal, caring beings who would sacrifice everything for those they considered pack. Their capacity for love was matched only by their capacity for determination. That combination made them terrifying enemies and invaluable friends. As the Resolute prepared to jump to hyperspace, Hana received a message from Captain Tay. It was simple. Welcome to the team, Commander. Let's show the galaxy what cooperation looks like. Hana smiled and sent her reply. Together, Captain. Always together. Outside the observation deck, human and Velkari crew members worked side by side, preparing for their next mission. The barriers between species were falling. Understanding was replacing fear. And at the center of it all were two warriors who had learned that the greatest strength came not from standing alone, but from standing together. The legend said she should fear the human warrior. But Hana had learned the truth. She did not fear him. She trusted him. She respected him. And most importantly, she called him friend. That, she thought, was far better than any legend.